is Nick Marx. Nick is an associate professor of film and media studies in the Department of Communication Studies at Colorado State University. His co-authored book exploring the rise of right-wing comedy, That's Not Funny, How the Right Makes Comedy Work for Them, I'm very excited for this topic, was named by Vulture as the third best comedy book of 2022. He is author or co-editor of 3 other books exploring the relationship between comedy, media, and politics. Sketch Comedy, Identity, Reflexivity, and American Television, published in 2019, The Comedy Studies Reader, published in 2018, and Saturday Night Live and American Television, published in 2013. Please welcome Nick Marx.
Thank you, Gabe, and thanks so much, everybody, for having me here. A bit of background before I launch into the topic of right-wing comedy. Yes, right-wing comedy. I'm an academic researcher. I work at a university, so my job as a film and media studies scholar is to watch movies, watch TV shows, analyze them, think critically about how they're made, why they're made, and what they mean to us. I, like Katie Borum and Jeff Jones and other folks, came of age in the post-Iraq War, 2008 financial crisis, climate of opposition, and had that sentiment supported by the political satire that I grew to love at that time, led by folks like Jon Stewart and Samantha Bee, and then Trevor Noah, and on, right? But as I dove deep into this liberal-oriented political satire, I couldn't help but notice, especially in the run-up to and after the 2016 election, that my political opposition, our political opposition, was also watching this material and learning from it and adapting it for their own political purposes. And so part of what I have to share with you today is based in a warning that even though we on the left have long taken pride in and supported and thought highly of our liberally oriented comedians, so too has America's right wing built up a robust, profitable, and yes, popular comedy of their own. We on the left may not think that it's funny, but that is precisely what I'm here to talk to you about today. So bear with me. As fanfare blares, men in wigs step onto a basketball court to play against the women's team for reasons too insultingly convoluted to explain. An ominous voiceover intones that women's sports are being transformed. No, this isn't the beginning of a classic cross-dressing comedy like Tootsie, Some Like It Hot, or my personal favorite, Rodney Dangerfield's 1992 magnum opus, Ladybugs. Any Ladybugs heads in the house? Yeah, Ladybug, Jonathan Brandis, young Jonathan Brandis. What I've described is an early scene from Lady Ballers, up in the right-hand corner there, a 2023 comedy movie that farcically depicts cisgendered men claiming to be women in order to dominate women's sports. It's the flagship effort from Bent Key, a streaming entertainment platform founded by right-wing political pundit Ben Shapiro and the star of the movie there, Jeremy Boring. Shapiro and a growing cadre of culture war-minded right-wing performers, producers, and financiers are increasingly looking to comedy to build their own alternative media industry distinct from the alleged liberal biases of Hollywood. Of course, at first glance, it's easy to shrug off Lady Ballers as yet another example that conservatives only have one joke. Are you all familiar with this? I identify as an attack helicopter, right? This is the sort of Twitter sphere right-wing joke lampooning liberal views on gender identity. So it's easy to dismiss sentiments like this with a sentiment like, that's not funny. I don't find that funny. However, as Matt Sinkowitz, my co-author, and I explore in our book, That's Not Funny, How the Right Makes Comedy Work for Them, this is a powerful and complicated thing to say. It can be an opinion stated as a fact or a disavowal. It can be, and often is, a moral judgment aimed at others, or even at oneself, a tisk-tisk for laughing when you know you shouldn't. When liberals discuss right-wing comedy, That's Not Funny is always lurking around the corner, ready to deploy one or all of its potential meanings in conversational combat. Often we use a sentiment like "that's not funny" to express a kind of bored disinterest in conservative attempts at humor, or to disavow its existence or potential existence altogether. So in the book, we explore a number of new, odd, and sometimes terrifying and downright reactionary and neo-Nazi comedians doing reactionary, offensive, awful jokes. Nonetheless, a lot of mainstream right-wing comedy is a lot like Lady Ballers, garnering millions of streams on platforms like BentKey while going mostly unacknowledged by many of us in this room. So the book and my ongoing research is an attempt to sort of map this world, this sort of unseen to the majority of media viewers world of right-wing media and especially right-wing comedy. So certainly much of this humor fails the tests of comedic quality and moral probity that many, myself included, wish to apply. And just as certainly, the cultural pervasiveness of right-wing comedy pales in comparison to that of long-standing center-left institutions like The Daily Show, which I mentioned earlier, and shows like Saturday Night Live, which tend to, even though they skew central and invite unfortunate people like Nikki Haley on, and even Donald Trump once upon a time, their sketches tend to sort of skew liberal, right? The right does not yet have a show as popular or as powerful as something like Saturday Night Live. But in the fractured world of contemporary media industries, right-wing comedy need not dominate or even cross into the mainstream in order to shape American society and politics profoundly. In fact, it may be all the more effective because it goes nearly unnoticed by the liberal world. Right-wing comedy has reached a point of economic sustainability and significant influence. Indeed, the future of progressive politics, I argue, depends in part on facing right-wing comedy and recognizing its influence to our political opponents. That's not funny, while it may be an honest reaction, is a perfectly fine way to express one's tastes or moral principles. It's just not a very good long-term political tactic. All right, so I just want to highlight a couple of I want to be totally clear, I hate these people. And I wish to see their entire sort of political project dismantled. But I also think it does a disservice to us in the room as progressives to pretend like half of the American population isn't capable of laughter or of playfulness or of joy, right? So in much the same way that we on the left have claimed the power of comedy as an organizing tool, I want to sound the alarm that this potential, though it's not happening on the scale we've seen on the left just yet, this potential exists on the right. So how many of you people have the unfortunate recognition of him in the lower right-hand corner? Shout his name out. Greg Gutfeld. Indeed, Greg Gutfeld. What network does Greg Gutfeld star on? Anybody? Fox News, importantly. Fox News. I'm a television historian. There's an important distinction between Fox broadcast. Yeah. Indeed, so Greg Gutfeld is Fox News's and the right-wing comedy world's sort of emerging Jon Stewart, their star, right? He's long been peppered across their schedule, first in the overnight hours with a show called Red Eye. He gradually joins the sort of primetime news hours on the 5 until the early 2010s when he has a Saturday nightly show called The Greg Gutfeld Show. And if you watch clips of this, there are many of them all over YouTube, it is a sort of center-right version of what Conan O'Brien would do in the late night hours. There were in-house comedy players, they did pre-recorded sketches, he did a monologue, a panel discussion. In 2019, he scales up to the nightly Gutfeld, exclamation point. And this is stripped across the week, directly opposite The Daily Show. By the 2022 midterm elections, Gutfeld is routinely winning the late night hour that he's competing against, The Daily Show on cable, and also the Jimmys in broadcast television. So he's averaging 2.5 million viewers per night, which is just about the same amount of people as watch The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, right? Now, caveats abound, Gutfeld's audience is much older, of course. They are watching commercials for reverse mortgages and things that many of us would sneer at, rightfully so. But the numbers are there, and the potential for this as an organizing tool for Fox is there as well. Looking around a bit more, can everybody see the sort of set of personages in the upper left-hand corner there? Sorry, I should have done these as separate pics. Do we recognize our favorite COVID vaccine skeptic, misogynist, racial epithet using comedian? Yes, Joe Rogan. Here he's got on as a guest Proud Boys founder Gavin McInnes. Gavin McInnes, if you don't know his backstory, was one of the co-founders of Vice magazine and sort of a leading voice in the sort of New York cultural scene of the early 2010s before he pivots pretty hard into hate, white supremacy, right? He's the leader of the Proud Boys for much of its existence up until they begin to make some unfortunate alliances, not unfortunate alliances, but they do Charlottesville, right? They kill a poor woman in a car. They are an out-and-out hate group. McInnes fancies himself a comedian. He performs as such. He tours as such. Certainly not on the scale as someone like Rogan, who, if you know his backstory, is as a sitcom star, right? Initially on news radio. He's got the Comedy Mothership in Austin, and he's got a whole community of like-minded libertarian comedians who circulate on his podcast, at his comedy studio and club in Austin, Texas, and undeniable that he's using jokes and joking and appeals to humor as a way to sort of garner eyeballs and garner audiences. Now here again, this isn't the sort of familiar sort of joke setup type of humor that we've grown to love on the left, but it is a type of in-group and out-group creation that comedy does, right? In this case, it is almost always a type of joking about and ownership of liberals and the left, right? The woke liberals are up to this again. Isn't it ridiculous, their obsession with, say, pronouns? It's a hobby horse for them, right? All right, finally, in the left-hand bottom corner, you probably can't see their icon, but this is a cover of the best-selling book by the authors and publishers of the Babylon Bee. Does anybody have some rueful nods and unfortunate recognition? The Babylon Bee, the Christian fundamentalist satire site that is the right's answer to The Onion. Here again, there's a sort of pipeline of producing comedians and comedy content, mostly shared through social media channels, that is satirical in its take on the supposed excesses of the left. Important to note that these efforts are not confined to a sort of echo chamber of like-minded right-wing ideologues, but the Babylon Bee draws its creative talent from producers and writers who've worked on shows for Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, who go on to write and direct in the feature film world as well. All right, so to be sure, right-wing comedy has miles to go before challenging legacy Hollywood media companies. But by strategically targeting their politically engaged audiences, a handful of recent efforts, including ones outside of the world of comedy, are pointing the way to right-wing media's gradual ascendance to a more mainstream presence. Take last summer's hit thriller, The Sound of Freedom. Do folks know this movie, Sound of Freedom? This is the kidnapping, sort of child trafficking movie that made $250 million at the box office. I'm assuming many of us in this room didn't care to seek it out, but it made a lot more money than many other Hollywood movies did. Or take Ben Shapiro's and Jeremy Boring's hit kids show Chip Chilla, which is a thinly veiled knockoff of Disney's Bluey. So as legacy media companies grapple with declining advertising revenue, the burgeoning right-wing media industries centered on comedy are betting that loyal, politically engaged subscribers will drive their growth, particularly as these subscribers' entertainment choices are tied to explicit electoral projects. So Ben Key and Boring's streaming entertainment empire has the support of former Republican presidential nominee Ron DeSantis, who also, of course, was quite close with Elon Musk and his X platform, who hosted his disastrous campaign launch this past summer, right? So, backed by this confluence of powerful right-wing voices, conservative entertainment can engage the Republican electorate in new ways that liberals are not yet anticipating. We would do well not to dismiss right-wing comedy's potentially galvanizing effects before the 2024 election. Thank you.